Hi and welcome to this video. So this video is mainly just talking about oversimplified characters, or like a way I could put this is like characters who are very heavily misunderstood or watered down to simple things that aren't really what define them as characters. It'll make more sense as I go in depth. This video is going to be definitely a more ranty type video. Obviously I'm going to be talking about specific characters in the game, but overall this is just going to be me ranting, just talking about these characters. Because I feel like a lot of people really just like to oversimplify these characters and who they are as characters with their own personalities and kind of just water them down. So let's just get into that. So the first character is Childe. Childe is, oh boy, this guy is always boiled down to be the stereotypical crazy white man that he is. And while it's, okay, it is partially true that he's kind of psychotic. But this whole shtick doesn't really go in depth with like why he is that way. People just kind of throw him into that category and then just leave it be. I think people kind of forget that like he was literally put into the fucking abyss at one point and had to train for like 3-ish months in abyss time, which is like I think a couple days in real time or even like a couple hours. I forgot the exact thing. I'll probably put the quote in the video, but basically just being in the abyss that long would probably make anyone crazy, to be honest. And I think he personally got incredibly lucky that he didn't just get slaughtered by his master and that she actually decided to train him instead of just beating him to oblivion. So I think that's very interesting about Childe. But his whole shtick of him being a stereotypical crazy person is like, it's partially true, but honestly, he doesn't really get enough credit and warranty for like actually surviving that time period that he was in the abyss. So I just think it's just something that's a bit overlooked. Nothing too crazy though. Obviously at the end of the day he is technically, I guess, crazy, and that's just how he is, but it's a whole lot. The next person I want to talk about is Eula. Eula is definitely a very misunderstood character in terms of why she acts the way she acts. Again, I feel like people do not really understand why she acts that way. People just go, well, she's pulling the whole vengeance stick and it honestly makes her unapproachable and honestly really annoying to deal with, so therefore she's just a dumb character. And I've seen threads like that before. I really wish I was joking. I've seen threads where people blatantly just call her stupid or like ignorant because she purposely does this whole vengeance stick that we see in her story quests, and like that's why no one likes her. No one likes her because she is from the Lawrence clan. If we forgot that, like, it wasn't even that long ago that the Lawrence clan quite literally was at the peak of their royalty or aristocracy or whatever that was, and they literally enslaved people. So of course anyone that has the Lawrence clan name is probably going to get hated on whether or not they are a nice person. And unfortunately for Eula, despite her being a nice person and despite her being a Knight of Favonius and doing good things and helping people out and protecting Mondstadt, they don't care because she's from the Lawrence clan. So to her, it's like, well, if they don't care whether or not I do good things for them or help them out over my name, what difference does it make about the way that I treat them? Because they're going to see me the same way regardless. And that is true. They don't see her any other way besides a person from the Lawrence clan and automatically thinks that she's evil, regardless of what she does. And so that's why she acts the way she acts. That's why she pulls the whole vengeance stick, because of the fact that they wouldn't care regardless, because they would still call her names, they would still call her trash, and they'd still call her evil simply for having the Lawrence clan name, despite all the rights that she tries to do to fix the wrongs. Now the next person is Scaramouche. This one is kind of iffy. At first I didn't think so, but the more that I looked into Scaramouche and started to understand his character, the more I started to realize that he is kind of oversimplified and misunderstood in a way. So to start, I've seen a lot of threads where like he's pretty much watered down to like kind of an emo boy. Let's be honest, there's a good amount of threads that kind of simplify that man to just be like a typical emo. I hate everybody and everybody's my enemy and I want to be the best emo boy. Like, come on. It's not that simple, let's be honest. And I've seen people who like Scaramouche that they don't want him to get a development arc or don't want him to get like a redemption arc, which kind of baffles me because I actually think out of all the Harbingers, it actually would make the most sense for him to have a redemption arc. I think we quite literally forgot that this guy was originally programmed to hold a gnosis that the current Archon can't use, and then was abandoned by said Archon, and then he just awoke one day and quite literally had to traverse the world, not knowing what the fuck to do. Obviously, at some point, he would harbor some resentment towards not even just like the person who created him, probably just harbors resentment for people in general. And if you look throughout his entire story, which is I think in the Husk set, which basically outlines a good portion of his story, and I think it reveals all of his story. I forgot if it was all of it or a portion of it, but a lot of Scaramouche stuff in that Husk set, and pretty much just explains that this guy literally had to traverse. He just wandered, and that's why his thing is the Wanderer. And while people called it cringe that his tag was leaked to potentially be the Wanderer, it makes sense for him because he quite literally was a wanderer for hundreds of years and just wandered around Teyvat doing God knows who what, and just walked around, and he was quite literally just the definition of a wanderer. He didn't know what he was doing, and he was basically just a lost soul just wandering around a world full of mystery. So I think him having a redemption arc would make the most sense out of probably all the Harbingers, to be honest, because he's the one character where having a redemption arc would make sense for him because of the way that he was created and how he was brought into this world in the very first place and how he ended up the way that he was. And I think that is something that is very, very overlooked. And honestly, we can just sum it down to he really just wants to feel alive. Let's be honest. Scaramouche just has a resentment towards everyone because honestly, this guy just wants to feel alive. Let's be honest. Somebody give this guy a hug because he was abandoned and now he's got mommy issues. So there's that. Okay, the next person I want to talk about is Ayaka. Now, Ayaka is very misinterpreted to being a manipulator towards the Traveler, and a lot of people gave her shit for that. Or basically, quote unquote, manipulating the Traveler into doing things in order to support her political agenda and to keep Inazuma from fucking collapsing. Now, listen, technically, yes, she manipulated Traveler, but the people that are talking about it talk about it in a negative connotation. And I feel like in this case, her manipulating Traveler wasn't necessarily a negative thing. I feel like, obviously, at the end of the day, manipulating someone isn't necessarily a good thing inherently, but honestly, in this case, Ayaka saw benefits to manipulating Traveler, and in a way, even if she wasn't even really manipulating him, she was honestly just telling him what the fuck was going on, and she was like, yo, you can help me out if you want, but like, honestly, it's your choice. We still had the freedom of choice to decide whether or not we wanted to help her, and we chose to just help her because, I mean, what else were we gonna do? How else were we gonna eventually get to Raiden Shogun and get maybe a potential answer from her or Yaimiko or whoever? So Ayaka did a good job being a catalyst for everything that then ended up transpiring in the whole Inazuma political realm. And of course, like, she had an agenda. Obviously, she was trying to do what was best for the political landscape, and of course her own commission, the Yashio Commission, and same thing with Ayato. Same exact thing. They're both doing what they can to benefit themselves, but also they aren't being like assholes about it. They're at least giving us the option to participate or not. And we had the option to participate, and what did we do? We participated. So while yes, technically we got manipulated, it wasn't really in a negative way, and not really a positive way either. It was just sort of like, yeah, we got manipulated, but then at the end of the day, we still made the inevitable choice to help her out because we decided, well, yeah, this is kind of shitty what is happening. And obviously I guess you could technically say she like skewed it to kind of fit her narrative a bit better, but not really. Honestly, not really. She was kind of saying what was happening. The bitch was fucking taking visions for no damn reason because she was scared of people dying, and she was like, you guys are gonna die anyway, so give me your visions because you don't need those, because trying to go for ambitions is like basically leading Inazuma to the way of Conria and how it fell off. So therefore you guys should not get visions because I'm trying to preserve your life as your Archon, which was obviously wrong. And so obviously Ayaka was like, not really into that, so let's revolt. So of course there's going to be some agenda going on there, but people of course, took it the wrong way and took it as if she tried to full on just manipulate Traveler into doing everything for her, when in reality Ayaka was doing the best that she could potentially do to save Inazuma, and well, that just happened. Then we ended up basically saving Inazuma from like a long-term collapse, so there's that. And next is Xiao, emo boy number 2. Oh my beloved. God, I swear, the English voice actors sometimes hard ruin characters and their personality sometimes, because when you listen to just the English voice actor for Xiao, it does give off like a I'm emo boy, meh, I hate everything and I'm tired of living, meh, 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 meh. And it's like, when I listen to him in English voice acting, it's like, yeah, it kind of gives off that vibe. But all the other ones, they pretty much deliver his personality a bit more accurately, and this kind of goes similarly for a good majority of the characters, because let's be honest, whoever's directing those English voice acting sessions, please do better, because a lot of the time they hit or miss personalities, and it's getting really aggravating at this point, and it leads to people, especially in the North American community who predominantly speak English, then just creating these watered down personalities of these characters, when in reality that's not really what's happening. And so honestly, I don't think people understand that a lot of his agony is, I mean, yeah, you can sum it up to him being an emo boy, but he's an emo boy because he has suffered for like thousands of years of just having to slaughter things and trying to protect Liyue, even though the people in Liyue kind of fear him and don't really like him in return necessarily, but more so they kind of just respect him at a basic level of like being an adepti, and that's really it. And that goes for a lot of the other adepti in Liyue. And that's why the adepti in Liyue at one point were like, you know, honestly, let's just fucking trash down Liyue because one of you guys may have potentially killed your Archon, which obviously that didn't happen. But you know what I mean? Like, there's those kind of tensions going on. And so obviously after you live for thousands of years and your sole job was just to take out karma and just try to make sure that you were just mentally hanging on as well as physically hanging on, and have reached the brink of death multiple times, like he has been near death probably a good number of times, and I would say one of the top at least 3 times out of all characters in terms of how many times he has faced death. He has probably faced death so many times to the point where he can't even count on his fingers, honestly. Let's be for real. So of course anybody in that situation would be depressed or just, you know, pessimistic in some way. And obviously with this recent Archon quest, we've gotten to see a little bit more of his positive side show up, so he's slowly developing into a more positive-ish character. Probably still somewhat pessimistic, but not as pessimistic as he was before, where it's like, I must sacrifice myself, or, you know, I have to do what's best for everybody else, and not always looking out for his best interest all the time. Now, next one is Albedo. Albedo, my beloved. Albedo is my favorite character of all time in the game. I do not care what you have to say. Next to Sino, which, by the way, where are the Sino leaks? We're leaking everybody in Sumeru, but where's Sino leaks? Hello? Anyways, back to Albedo. Honestly, this whole Albedo is gonna blow up Mondstadt and die narrative, we gotta stop with this, okay? First of all, it was one little thing that he mentioned, and honestly, even if it did happen, what he says isn't really the best interpretation of what he meant to say. So obviously when he mentions or refers to Mondstadt and how there's a potential timeline of him possibly threatening Mondstadt or being a threat to Mondstadt, and obviously him asking us, you know, will you be there to stop me? When he says this, I do not necessarily think that he talks about really him specifically. I think he more so means the stuff that he creates, because the stuff that he creates could pose a threat to Mondstadt, but I don't think he would willingly and purposefully try to attack Mondstadt for any reason. Mainly because he doesn't get any benefit out of doing it out of his own will. Mondstadt gives him the resources and the tools to do what he wants to do. So that already, that kind of makes a little bit to no sense, although honestly people betray their own nations that help them out all the time, so I mean that's kind of thrown out the window, but we can add that in some sort of logical sense, right? And on top of that, I don't really get the whole he's gonna blow up Mondstadt and then die. Obviously it was a very popular theory at the time, but honestly the more that I think about it, the more that I realize that there's a lot of holes with this, mainly just because of the fact that it's of the way that you interpret what he's saying. And honestly, in my opinion, I don't think that he's just going to try to threaten Mondstadt and try to kill everyone and then die. I think it's more of he might accidentally make something that becomes a threat to Mondstadt, and then they all have to work together to try and like fix it and prevent like another Conria 2.0 from happening type-esque. Not necessarily him becoming evil and like turning on everyone, just more so of like, oh shit, I think one of my inventions might be fucked up and I don't think I could control it. And we saw a tiny bit of that because he has, as we know, a clone, and he could potentially also have another clone. In fact, he probably has up to maybe 2 clones at this point, and one of them might be walking along the society as like a normal person. As we saw towards the end, it kind of implied that the other Albedo may still be roaming around. And honestly, they're not even necessarily a threat though anyway, they just wanted to be human themselves in a way. So honestly, with that aside, there's stuff like that that goes into play, and honestly, at the end of the day, it just comes to a sense of misinterpretation into what he is saying. And lastly, Ayato, one of my faves. Okay, notice how a lot of people in this are like my faves. Don't question it. Now on Ayato, you guys, I will never forgive you, because you guys did a similar thing with Kazuha, but that was more in terms of kit. In terms of personality, you guys shat on my boy Ayato so much, especially over that one Ito quote, that when he was talking about Ito, you guys ran it to the hills and you never looked back, and you just ran with that. And I just did not understand why. When I first listened to that quote, when it was like a week before his release, I think, or I don't know, it was sometime before his release, and like obviously we knew Ayato was coming, and then we saw like one of his voice lines about Ito, and we had the text and everything. If I have the video, I'll link it in the description. I'll also put it on the screen here. But it was basically the tweet where it was showing the voice line, right? And he was talking about Ito, and obviously he's head of the Yasho Commission. He's doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff. So obviously when he meets up with Ito, a very brash, a very open, a very I don't really care what you think of me type person, obviously he was kind of taken aback, and he was like, whoa, what the fuck? Who are you? You are really weird, but not in a bad way. People took him being like somewhat judgmental towards Ito as like a bad thing, when it was like, no, he actually kind of likes Ito because he's very different from Ayato. And it's a similar dynamic with Ayaka and us. Ayaka really appreciates our existence mainly because of the fact that we're not really super royal. We don't really have to follow by too many rules, obviously because we're kind of from technically another land. And on top of that, we kind of get to live life somewhat freely. And to her, that's like, I kind of want to be that, but at the end of the day, I have to take care of my responsibilities as head and representative of the Kamisato clan. And so obviously it's a similar thing with Ayato. Ayato saw this very out and open person, and he's like, you're a very interesting person. You're kind of weird to me. However, I like you. And that was kind of the dynamic that they wanted to represent with Ito and Ayato. But people took it the complete wrong way and completely misinterpreted it, calling him ugly, calling him mean, calling him rude, being like, so wait, they're not bros? Or like, oh no, Ayato hates Ito? No, he doesn't hate Ito. In fact, he likes Ito. Like, if you just read it and just look over again, you start to realize that what he says is said out of curiosity and interest rather than out of prejudice and to be rude and mean. And it's mainly that part, because that part really just frustrated me when Ayato came out, and that honestly kind of drove a narrative for Ayato for a good, like, honestly, that kind of drew the narrative for him the entire patch, because then people judged his story quests, and then after that people judged his gameplay, and then it just went into a string of things that just made no sense, and you just went with a narrative that was completely incorrect and invalid from all points of view, honestly. Anyways, if you did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. For the next video, I'm probably not going to talk about 2.8 in the next video, because the next video I'm playing is this Monday. I'm planning on trying to just upload videos Mondays and Fridays specifically, and try to keep it consistent for you guys. So this Monday, it'll probably be another discussion video. I don't know what topic I want to talk about yet, but just know it'll be a discussion type video. And then probably on either Friday or maybe the next Monday, because I think there's 7 or 6 more days before 2.8 comes out. So I'll try to get a video almost ASAP when 2.8 comes out, because I do want to talk about a lot of the stuff that happened, because I watched the live stream and there was a lot of interesting stuff going on, and there's a lot of parallels between what was happening in that 2.8 trailer and also what was happening in the 2.7 Archon quest with Xiao and when we were going up back onto the platform of the chasm. So there's just all that I want to get into when 2.8 comes out. So yeah, and until the next video, bye bye.